forest was never meant to be walked at night. Locals had said it for years. Don't wander past the treeline after dark, because you might not come back. But Clara had never been one to believe old warnings. It was just past midnight when she stepped outside her grandmother's cabin. The air was cold enough to sting, and the moon had sunk behind the clouds, leaving everything wrapped in thick, suffocating blackness. That was when she saw it. A faint glow flickered between the trees. Not the steady light of a flashlight, nor the orange warmth of a campfire. This was different, soft, swaying, like the heartbeat of a dying flame. A lantern. Clara froze. Her first thought was that someone else might be out there, another hiker, maybe a hunter. But the longer she stared, the more wrong it felt. The lantern didn't move like a person was carrying it. It drifted, weaving slowly between the trunks, always just far enough to remain out of reach. Something in her chest tightened. A whisper of instinct screamed at her to go back inside, to lock the door and draw the curtains. But curiosity clawed harder. Against her better judgment, Clara pulled on her jacket, stepped into her boots, and walked toward the glow. The forest swallowed her immediately. The moment she crossed the treeline, the cabin vanished behind her, as though the darkness had erased it. The lantern's glow bobbed ahead, its pale flame luring her deeper. Each step made the silence heavier, until even the crunch of her own footsteps seemed too loud. Clara whispered into the night, "Hello?" The glow paused, just for a moment. Then it drifted again, slower this time, as if answering her call. Her throat went dry. She tried to convince herself it was nothing, that the forest was playing tricks on her eyes. But her feet wouldn't stop moving. With each step, the lantern pulled her further in, and the air grew colder, sharper, until it felt like breathing in glass shards. Finally, she stopped. The lantern hung motionless ahead, swaying ever so slightly in a wind that did not exist. Clara's skin prickled. Her hands trembled. And then, just faintly, she heard it. A whisper. Low. Familiar. Clara. Her heart slammed against her ribs. It was her mother's voice. But her mother had been dead for 7 years. Amelia's breath misted in the cold night air as she trudged deeper into the forest. The lantern glowed steadily ahead of her, swaying as if carried by an unseen hand. No matter how quickly she walked, the distance between her and the light never seemed to change. It was always just out of reach, pulling her further from the safety of the trail she knew. The silence pressed against her ears. Even the wind had died, leaving only the crunch of leaves beneath her boots. Then snap! A twig broke somewhere behind her. Amelia froze. Slowly, she turned, her heart thundering in her chest. Nothing. Just shadows stretching between the trees. She forced a laugh under her breath, though it sounded brittle. It's just my imagination. Just branches breaking under the cold. But then she noticed something she hadn't before. Everywhere she looked, the trees leaned, their trunks bent slightly toward the lantern, as though the entire forest was being pulled by it. Her throat tightened, but her legs refused to stop. She had to know who was leading her, why they hadn't spoken, why the light never slowed. The deeper she went, the more the forest changed. The bark on the trees looked burned, etched with markings that resembled open eyes. Some of the knots in the wood bulged outward, almost like swollen faces frozen in silent screams. Amelia quickened her pace, trying not to stare, but the eyes, those carved, endless eyes, seemed to follow her. Suddenly, the lantern paused. For the first time, it stopped moving, hanging motionless in the void of trees. Amelia's chest lifted with shaky relief. "Hello," she called, her voice trembling. "Who's there? Why are you leading me?" No answer. She took another step, crunching the frost-covered leaves beneath her. Another. And then, as she neared, she realized the lantern wasn't hanging from a branch at all. It floated. Her breath caught in her throat. She reached out, her fingertips trembling toward the glow. And that was when she heard it, soft, low, and carried on no wind at all. A whisper. It didn't come from ahead. It came from all around her. Words she couldn't understand, curling in the air like smoke, seeping into her ears. The forest seemed to bend closer, pressing in, and the lantern flickered violently, as if reacting to the voices. Amelia's instincts screamed at her to run, but her feet stayed rooted. The whispers grew louder, until one word cut through them all, sharp and clear. Her name. Amelia. The lantern went out. The forest swallowed Amelia deeper with every step, the air pressing heavier against her chest. The lantern ahead bobbed steadily, as if carried by a figure she could never quite see. Its glow was no longer soft. It pulsed, alive, beating like a heart in the shadows. Branches clawed at her arms, whispering through the dark like voices trying to warn her. Yet the lantern's pull was irresistible. She wasn't walking anymore. She was following, her body betraying her mind. Finally, the light paused. It hung there, hovering between two trees that twisted unnaturally close together, like a mouth opening wide. Amelia stopped, her breath ragged. For the first time, she noticed the forest was silent. No crickets, no wind. Even her footsteps seemed muffled. Then she saw them. Eyes, dozens of them, peering from the dark beyond the lantern's glow. They blinked in unison, glinting pale yellow, too high, too low, too wide apart to belong to anything human. Amelia stumbled back, her foot catching a root. The lantern flared brighter, and the eyes drew closer, circling her. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Who's there?" The answer came not from the shadows, but from the lantern itself. The flame inside twisted, forming the faint outline of a face, gaunt, hollow-eyed, its mouth stretched into a soundless scream. Amelia's stomach lurched while burning her throat. The ground beneath her feet trembled. The trees groaned as though they were breathing. Roots snaked across the soil, curling toward her ankles. She tore free, her pulse roaring in her ears, but the lantern moved again, leading her deeper. She should have run the other way. She knew that, and yet her feet followed, as though a string were pulling her forward. Suddenly, the lantern stopped again, this time above a small clearing. In the center stood a stone well, old and crumbling, black vines wrapping around it like skeletal fingers. The lantern hovered above it, dangling, swaying gently as if daring her to approach. Her throat was dry. Something told her that the forest wanted her here, that everything she had seen was just leading her to this well. She edged closer. As she peered into the darkness below, she expected to see her reflection. Instead, what stared back was another face. Her own, but twisted, skin sagging, eyes black, mouth sewn shut with thick, rotting thread. And then her reflection smiled. The forest grew quieter than death itself. Even the owls and the insects seemed to vanish as if swallowed by the night. Emma's trembling steps carried her deeper into the trees, and yet the lantern always hovered just ahead, beckoning her forward like a phantom flame. Her breaths came shallow, clouding in the cool air. She felt watched, eyes upon her from every direction. At first, she thought it was paranoia, but then she caught them. Tiny pinpricks of pale light glinting between the trees. Dozens of them. They blinked once, in unison, then disappeared. Emma clutched her phone, desperate for the glow of its screen, but it had died long ago. The only light left was the lantern, and she couldn't tell if it guided her or trapped her. She stumbled over roots that jutted like bones from the ground. A sudden sound, low, guttural breathing, rose from the shadows behind her. She spun, chest heaving. Nothing. Only trees, endless and unkind. The lantern bobbed again, swinging gently. But now it wasn't floating ahead. It was waiting, suspended, as if someone or something was holding it. Emma's voice cracked. "Who's there?" The silence pressed heavy, then a voice answered. A whisper, dry and brittle like dead leaves crumbling underfoot. "You came just like they all do." Her body froze. The figure stepped forward, half shrouded in darkness. The lantern illuminated only fragments, a hand too thin to be human, skin stretched pale and translucent, and a face partially hidden beneath a hood. She glimpsed the outline of hollow eyes, black and endless, staring through her. Emma stumbled back, her pulse screaming inside her ears. I thought you needed help." The figure raised its head. Its mouth curved into a grin far too wide, revealing teeth jagged as broken glass. "Help," it rasped. "No, I wanted company." The forest around her seemed to shift, trees bending inward like walls closing around a trap. From the shadows, more lights flared to life, lanterns, dozens of them, swaying between the trees. And beneath each one hung something. Figures, lifeless, their feet dangling, eyes glassy, mouths open in silent screams. Emma's stomach lurched. The bodies dangled from invisible ropes, their faces pale, drained. Some looked fresh, others only husks. The lanterns illuminated their suffering, forever captured in the forest's grip. The hooded figure stepped closer, lantern raised high. Its voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Now it's your turn to stay." Emma's instinct screamed to run, but the ground beneath her shifted, softening like wet soil. Her feet sank, roots winding around her ankles, pulling her down inch by inch. She thrashed, clawing at the dirt, but the more she fought, the tighter the roots coiled. Above her, the lantern's flame flickered wildly, casting shadows that danced like demons across the trees. Emma's scream tore through the night, and somewhere deep in the dark forest, something screamed back. The lantern's glow finally stilled at the edge of a clearing. Amelia stumbled into it, her chest heaving, her legs trembling like branches in a storm. The forest was deathly silent now. No insects, no wind, just the thud of her heartbeat echoing in her ears. In the center of the clearing stood a single, withered tree. Its bark was pale as bone, its roots twisted above the ground like skeletal fingers. And hanging from one of its lowest branches was the lantern. It wasn't held by anyone. The flame inside flickered, steady and patient, as though it had been waiting for her. Amelia's breath hitched. She took a step back, but the roots shifted beneath her feet, curling like snakes, tightening around her ankles. She screamed, tugging desperately, but the roots held her in place. From the shadows around the tree, figures began to emerge. Pale shapes, human at first glance, but wrong upon closer look. Their limbs bent at impossible angles, their hollow eyes glowing faintly like dying embers. One by one, they raised their hands, pointing toward Amelia. Her voice cracked as she cried, "What do you want from me?" The lantern's flame swelled, casting grotesque shadows across the clearing. Then a whisper filled the air, not from one voice, but from many, overlapping, endless. "You followed. You belong." Her mind reeled. The faces staring back at her, she recognized them. People from the missing posters, neighbors who had vanished years ago, faces from childhood she thought long forgotten. All of them trapped here, bound to the forest. No, I didn't mean to," she sobbed, struggling against the roots that snaked higher, curling around her legs, her waist. The figures moved closer, their mouths opening in silent screams, their eyes fixed on her with desperate hunger. The lantern's glow dimmed for a moment, then flared with blinding intensity. Amelia felt something pull at her chest, a wrenching, tearing sensation, as if her very soul was being dragged out of her body. She screamed until her voice broke. Then silence. When the light faded, the clearing was empty. The roots loosened and fell still. The lantern swung gently from its branch, the flame burning steadily once more. And where Amelia once stood, a new figure now lingered at the edge of the shadows. Her eyes glowed faintly, her mouth parted in an endless, soundless cry, just like the others. The lantern waited, patient and eternal, for the next soul foolish enough to follow.